Never fear, Kev Baker is here. Yes, I see everyone in the chat room panicking. I was a bit late getting in there today. And that's because I was too busy talking to today's guest. We were catching up, getting ready for today's show, which is going to be another cracker. Let me just tell you right here at the outset, it's going to be an absolutely brilliant 2 hours of radio. I tend to find that when this guest comes on, from the emails that I get from our hardcore listeners, I think everyone feels a little bit more uplifted, a little bit more energetic, and we certainly feel a whole lot more vibrant by the time today's guest leaves the show. But before we get there, I had a really interesting conversation today on Facebook, no less. And you know, sometimes you really do forget how big a part a show like this and every other show on the network here and throughout the alternative media, sometimes easy to lose sight of the effect that you're making out there in the real world. And we all remember when we woke up ourselves and we found our favourite podcasts and stuff like that. So I want to give a big shout out to Heidi down in England, a very new listener by the sounds of it. And yeah, a wee smile on my face because see that enthusiasm, just pure raw enthusiasm you have when the kind of scales lift from your eyes. You start to see the world for the way it really is. And sometimes I personally forget that I'm having an effect on people's lives, and waking people up, it's no small thing. And that's not to give my ego a boost or anything like that, but it's all of us here, you know, hosts, all of you in the chat room, further afield as well. You go forth and you share the information that you hear here. And I suppose we've been around a while, right? We're here on Truth Frequency, and I kind of regard us as one of the most switched on audiences in the whole of the conspirasphere. And even you out there, you're playing your part to wake new people up. And if nothing else in this crazy world that we're in, you should feel really, really good about the part that all of you are playing, because I'm sure it's people sharing the shows that I do with people like tonight's guest, all the other amazing people we've had on here, that has allowed Heidi and others out there the opportunity to come to the awakening that is happening at an ever-increasing speed right now. So a big shout-out to Heidi. There you go. Any other new listeners want a shout-out, just get in touch with me. Don't troll me. I'm used to being trolled. Maybe that's why it was so nice to have somebody polite and thankful and grateful today. But yeah, that really uplifted my spirits for today's show. And today's guest is somebody who has become one of my regular guests. We all know I'm kind of shameless when a good guest comes along. I try and kind of secure them for a monthly slot on the show. Not for my guilty pleasure. Okay, some of it is. But it's because of the information that you're getting out there as well. And if it wasn't for the information, I certainly wouldn't be bringing this lady on time after time after time. Because like I was saying there with the role I play in helping to wake others up, Jojo is playing a very significant role on this planet at this time as well. And that's right, folks. I gave away the secret. Today's special guest is my very good friend, Jojo Seebacher. And for anyone who's just tuning in for the first time and may not have heard her before, Jolene Jojo Seebacher is a counsellor and teacher specialising in helping targeted individuals, experiencers including abductees and love bite victims, MyLabs, satanic ritual abuse victims, and project survivors, as well as the newly awakened. Now, she speaks publicly worldwide and is a survivor herself with an incredible life story. And I urge everyone to go and check out the previous episodes that we've done here with Jojo to get a bit of that kind of backfilling as to what we're going to be getting into tonight. It says here for the last 14 years, Jojo has been running services called Session Work, teaching something called the 5 Foundations and PSI, that's PSI, self-defense and protection techniques to these classifications of individuals out there. Now, ultimately, Jojo promotes self-healing and teaching against the new age/cage agendas, something that we're really going to be drilling into tonight. And for anyone out there throughout the course of the show, if you think, yeah, this is really resonating with me and you would like to speak to Jojo personally, Jojo is very, very accessible. And all you have to do is visit her over on Facebook, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see a link on the screen for Jojo's website, over at Facebook where you can get in touch with her for all of the above stuff that I just mentioned. And I'm sure if this is the first time you've heard Jojo, you're going to be blown away. So without me rabbiting on and on, Jojo, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love coming on Truth Frequency. I love your frequencies, the chat room's frequencies. You listeners are so important in our family. Just really honored to always be here. So thank you
I
for
think
all you do.
yeah, I think TFR, I think we could call it like an extended soul family, Jojo. That's what it honestly feels like here. You know, you make connections through the chat room, through people that listen on social media, and it really is as if we all are on that same or very similar frequency. Now, we don't all agree on everything. That would be unrealistic. However, there's a certain vibe, a certain truth frequency, if you pardon the pun, to what's going on here.
So true. And I've met a few of your listeners through the last several shows who've come in as clients to me, and I feel such a soul connection with every single person that comes and works with me. A soulmate connection, a soul family connection. It's deeper than a blood kind of connection. It's a real energetic, past lifetime sort of bond that we all have with one another. We're sharing the same frequencies on this human level. So, it's a real gift that you're doing what you do, Kev, and Chris and Cherie to initiate TFR, to bring us all here, to unite us as Soul Tribe. And, I give props to all of you. Huge, huge love, respect, and just gratitude to every one of you.
I've said it before and I'll keep on saying it. I remember when this idea was born in the mind of the Geos. It was just like a kind of throwaway comment that maybe, if we're not happy at other networks, we should just start our own. And that they did. And here we all are. Now then, I have to ask you, because the last time you were on, you left a lot of us quite concerned because you'd been in that pesky car accident. How's things, the recovery? How's that going, Jojo?
Well, I'm a trauma recovery specialist. So I help trauma victims, right? It's my specialty. It's my special area. And I've been through a series of traumas through my life, and car accidents are considered a trauma, folks. So the trauma of the injuries from the whiplash and the ripped rotator cuff, the way that the injuries were together, I'm not healing up to swell. I have a lot of pain in the shoulder blade area, so I'm going to see a specialist to try to get me on a holistic path of possibly some plant medicine. So
Yes,
we'll see how
absolutely.
that goes.
And
This
you
is my
said
first
something.
time.
Yeah, you said something really interesting to me before the show that I actually hadn't thought of before, but the minute you said it, it made perfect sense. And the brain, it just receives trauma. It doesn't differentiate between one trauma or another. It's just trauma on the brain. The brain knows no different. It's all the same, isn't it, Jojo? So whether it's stuff from childhood, whether it's a car accident, trauma's trauma, right?
Very much so. And you really have to look at this very deeply. So if we take the system that we're living in and all of this inversion and disgracefulness in the world and this narcissism that I'm calling it, a narcissistic system of these constructs, we're really dealing with a paradigm of not only healing, but the paradigm of broken people, traumatized people. So trauma can be anything from car accidents, loss of loved ones, injuries, sports injuries, loss of a career. Of course, then we talk about the real heavy duty stuff like sexual trauma, psychological torture in a narcissistic abuse relationship, childhood trauma, neglect, things of that. And when you add it all together, you've got some really damaged people in this narcissism. But if you take a quote unquote, normal person who's had a series of car accidents, maybe even a bad dentist experience, loss of a loved one, all of those little mini traumas together, if they're not addressed properly, not only emotionally, spiritually, neurologically, but biologically, then those series of mini traumas will equate to the same type of trauma that a prisoner of war has. And that is serious, folks. So we're dealing with a very broken society of traumatically infused individuals. Many of us, and I myself, health issues, surgeries. This is all trauma. You go under anesthesia. That's trauma. You're in a fender bender. That's trauma. When you start adding up these mini traumas and you don't address it emotionally, spiritually, neurologically, and physiologically, it will actually result in depression, suicidal thoughts, nervous breakdowns, and post-traumatic stress disorder or complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's where I would like to come in and make changes here, and help people with trauma recovery.
No, absolutely. And we were saying trauma to the brain, it's all the same. And I'm really glad that you kind of highlighted that for me. I'd never really put that together, although, like I say, it made perfect sense when you actually said it, Jojo. And, I've lost a career. I can go back 20 odd years to when I came out the army and things. And, I still think I carry some of that baggage about with me right now. And listening to you, I mean, you would certainly probably agree with that.
Yeah, very much so. What people also don't understand what the missing link is, it isn't just in the brain. It's not just residing in the heart and the brain. Of course, there are wonderful therapies that you work with the hemispheres of the brain. You work with the counseling and the heart-based stuff and the talking. But the missing piece is the physiology part. And I do want to explain this to people because most counselors or therapists or people that do modalities do not address trauma in the physical sense of release. So these series of traumas through an individual's life, and everybody has them, these series of mini traumas or big traumas combined with mini traumas. Physiologically, it works with the adrenal system in the body. It works with the oxytocin levels and the chemicals in the body. Things get trapped in muscles and cells and things of that nature. And it's very similar to something called a subluxation. Maybe you have a car accident, it might be a fender bender, you think you're not injured, and then 2 years later you wake up in the morning and you can't move your neck or get out of bed because you're having a subluxation from that car accident 2 years ago. The trauma was stopped and it wasn't allowed to be released through the physical body. So rape victims, neglect victims, victims of narcissistic abuse who have their voice taken away or, things of that. They don't have a way to release the trauma physically. So I want to work with people not only on the psychological, the heart level, the spiritual level, using the universal laws, but also the physiological level. It's a complete way we need to heal. And if you don't release it physically in the body, you could work all you want on the brain and you're still going to have it trapped in the physiology. So this is a complete system I work with, which maybe might address the first thing I wanted to talk about, because when I've been on your shows, I read a lot of the comments on YouTube, and a lot of folks, accuse me of being a new ager. And what I've just explained alone, folks, is far from new age. This is science. We're talking about physiology, neurology. Of course, we're talking energy alchemy. If you want to call that new age, that's fine. But
you see, what I find, Jojo, is this new age. There is some okay stuff in there, good stuff in there, and people that it's easy for us all to just kind of go, roll the eyes. It's new age stuff, but like you say, some of the stuff that you do talk about, yeah, sure, sounds very new agey, but that doesn't make it bad.
Yeah, a lot of this, I work with the laws of the universe, and that might sound new agey to people, but it's very gnosis. It's very occult. It's working with energy. It's working with mentalism. It's working with your emotions. It's working with changing the dynamics of and creating reality or destroying reality. It might sound very magical. It might sound witchy. It might sound new age. But folks, it's the paradigm you're living in, whatever label you want to put it. It's we are creators, whether you want to admit it in a label or not. We are destroyers as much as we are creators. And I want to be able to teach people how to use both the destruction and the creation to work and manifest for you and help heal you. But we also have to be practical and address things on a psychological level, on the brain level, on a neurological level, on the emotional level, on this. Obviously, we just talked about the spiritual level, but the missing link is like we've got to add the physiological level here. If you look at nature will teach you so much. It'll teach you all the archetypes in any Jungian psychology book just by watching nature. But you can look at animals and how they work with trauma. An animal that gets traumatized has an ability to recover itself and go right back to doing what it's meant to do and how it's meant to live with no repercussions, no traumatization, following it and fucking up its life. Sorry. Oh, I shouldn't have swore. I'm sorry. Sorry about that, folks. So when you look at, like, I just gave an example to a client today. If a gazelle is being chased by a lion on the Serengeti, and let's say that somehow that gazelle, she knows her life is in danger. She knows, she's in survival mode, trying to escape this possibility of dying. She's trying to survive. She's in victim mode. She's being chased down. And let's say the lion, somehow stumbles and falls over some kind of brush, and the gazelle gets away. The gazelle's not going to go back to her tribe all, jacked up. She's not going to go back and have a jacked up life thinking about that trauma with the lion. What she does is she goes into this shaking. She goes into tremors, and her whole body shakes and releases. Now, this is not just gazelles. This is what animals do, whether it's a dog, a cat, any type of animal. They will go into a shaking mode and release the trauma out of their body and take like 3 huge, very strange breaths, jump back up, and then go about their day like nothing happened. So, I want to sort of bring that into trauma recovery with the human. Very much like that animal. We can do this.
I sometimes watch the kind of safari shows, things like that. Don't laugh, but my cat actually enjoys sitting watching these nature programs, right? But I enjoy them myself. And it's true what you're saying, you don't ever hear them, or you don't ever like look at a lion or any of the animals there and think, oh, look at that one. It's having a really bad day. It's throwing a hissy fit. Look at the baggage that giraffe's carrying about with it. If they were to take that trauma with them and not release it the way you're saying, Jojo, they just wouldn't survive, right? So it's very important that we deal with this, not just the animals, but us ourselves, because, okay, it's not going to be a matter of maybe life and death for us, like in the animal kingdom, but it's certainly going to take its toll on us over time.
It is like a matter of life or death when you're a child, whether you're physically being abused, sexually being abused, emotionally or mentally being abused. That child goes into a survival mode and they develop a belief system in their mentalism of how to protect themselves or to fight or flight. So, it's really quite the same thing. I kind of lost a little track of what I was saying, got a little distracted. If anybody wants to learn about the animal kingdom and how it portrays into the human being, I believe there's an author named Dr. Levine, I think his name is Dr. Peter Levine, if I'm not incorrect, who talks about trauma in animals. Don't quote me on his last name. I'm pretty sure it's Levine.
That's a name that I'm going to take down, and if it's wrong, it's wrong, but it certainly sounds like a guest that I would definitely pursue to get on the show for sure, because that sounds really, really interesting. Now, we're probably about 5 minutes from the break, and I want to inform everyone, head on over, if you can, to the TFR chat room. And it's not the usual reason, because it's just so cool to hang out in there with all of the fellow TFR family. But Jojo, you've got a special treat for one of the chatters tonight as well, don't you?
I do. I'm going to give away a little mini read to just a random chatter who can schedule with me and have a free little mini reading with me, a little psychic reading and a oracle card reading. And to any of the folks in the chat room, if you do schedule a psychic oracle read with me, I will discount it. Instead of $111 for any TFR chat roomer, I will offer it at $65 for 2 full hours.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I seen the chatters when you informed them of that earlier on. They were absolutely ecstatic. Now, I see a question in the chat room. And is it okay to bring you one of these questions just now, Jojo? Because you mentioned the narcissistem that we live in. I love that term. I love that phrase. I'm going to borrow that and I'll give you credit every time I use it. But Dr. Kayak in the chat, big shout out to him. He says, I'd be interested to know if the guest thinks that narcissism is on the rise. And if so, why is that, Jojo?
Okay, great question. Thank you. And by the way, the term narcissism was created by a friend of mine who may be joining the TFR hosting family. His name is Adam Sanchez. So he came up with the term narcissism. All right. So the reason why it's such a problem is we've lived under these constructs, these lies for so long. We haven't been given the tools to defend ourselves, to know the truth, to be able to express ourselves, to be able to have feelings and opinions that are treated well with other people. So we formed a narcissism here. Society is predominantly narcissistic. And I'll repeat these statistics. They're horrifying statistics. 1 out of 3 people in the world are narcissists. That's a lot of people. 1 out of 3 people are narcissists. 30% of those narcissists in the world are sociopaths, which means they could give a crap if you live or die. They don't care about you, your feelings, your opinions, your life. The people that are in these families of narcissists usually develop a dynamic called a codependent and a narcissist. You know, usually the parents, one of them is a narcissist, one of them is a codependent. They could possibly exhibit very similar traits to one another. This is a very interesting subject to talk about because a lot of the traits of a codependent will be severe traits of a narcissist and vice versa. So when you're dealing with a codependent, for instance, in a narcissistic relationship, they don't have their boundaries honored. They don't have their feelings or opinions matter. They could have gone through a series of what I call the crap: criticism, rejection, abandonment, and punishment for having feelings, opinions, and boundaries. They're punished for having feelings, opinions, and boundaries. And when the codependent tries to express the feelings, opinions, or boundaries, they get criticized, rejected, abandoned, or punished for having normal feelings, opinions, or boundaries. So it creates this trauma bonding going on, and the codependent starts to believe a false sense in their mentality, in their structure as a child, and they grow up with that same child belief imbued in them as an adult. And so on the opposite end, the narcissist is someone that refuses to become self-aware. I'm not saying that they're all horrible people. All narcissists are not horrible people. They will exhibit very nice tendencies, very romantic, love bombing, kind, even doing kind things for people. They're not all terrible people. But a narcissist is incapable of wanting to problem solve. A narcissist is incapable of wanting self-awareness to be self-accountable. And the narcissist is incapable of accepting self-accountability. They can't admit it to themselves because the shame would be so bad on them. They'd have to do self-healing. They'd have to be accountable. They'd have to admit they've stepped on boundaries, feelings, and opinions. So We've got these two types of people floating around the world.
Well, hold that thought.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
This whole putting the clocks forward in one part of the world, yet not in another. And I want to thank everyone, before we get to the second hour of the show, if you did make it here on time, if you're in the UK or in Europe, and I don't even know if the Australians have touched their clocks. It's just so bizarre. But obviously we start at the earlier time now of 9 p.m. in the UK. And usually when this happens, we see the numbers and things. You can tell from the analytics that a lot of people, by the time they realise that the show starts early, it's usually time for us to put our clocks forward anyway. So everything goes back to normal. And usually maybe you lose about a third, maybe sometimes half of the audience in the first half of the show, but not so much this year. So I want to thank everyone for turning up in their numbers in the chat room and further afield around this crazy world that is definitely in a narcissism right now. I love this term. And I'm really glad that you cleared up where that term came from, Jojo, because I'm certainly going to be borrowing that from time to time. And before we get back into the narcissists, I mean, it's just crazy how we're playing about with the clocks, right? Is there really any need for this?
Yeah, I wonder. I've always speculated, and especially when President Bush did it over here in the United States when he was in office, the senior guy. And I just thought, what are you trying to hide with the polls? Did the polls shift? It was just a theory at the time. Who knows if it's true? It might be a speculative question to give one of those flat earther people to try to figure out for us. I don't know.
Well, you see,
yeah.
I don't cover flat Earth on this show, and I'm proud to say that TFR has some of the biggest flat Earth hosts on the planet. So I defer any flat Earth questions to them. So there we go. Yes, absolutely. That's my get out clause from flat Earth. And I don't mean to offend anyone out there who believes it's flat, because tonight, whether it's flat, round, or hemorrhoid shaped, it's in a NarciSystem, and it's all the same level playing field when we're talking about narcissists, sociopaths, and how today, Jojo, our world is basically dominated by things like this.
It's dominated by it, but the question we need to start asking ourselves, rather than being a victim, and even rather than being a survivor, is taking self-accountability for why we are allowing ourselves to be victimized or in that survivor mode, allowing ourselves to be that way. And, I'd really like to, maybe I can give a shameless plug here, you guys, the listening audience.
It's not shameless. I encourage your plugs because it's my way of paying you for your time to come on the show, Jojo.
Thank you. It means a lot. I'd like to be a speaker at the Anarchadelphia conference this coming September on this, transforming trauma in the narcissistem. Anarchadelphia, you could look up on Google, and if you guys want to hear me speak, I encourage anyone to contact them and ask for me to speak. I don't have a website or a huge YouTube channel to support me speaking there like other speakers, Zach Hubbard and Mark Passio and people like that. I think they need a strong woman in there talking about transforming trauma in this narcissistem. And I would love the support of anyone who believes in my work to contact these folks and urge them to bring me in to speak, or even on the conference level, other than Anarchadelphia. But I thought that might be a good place to start, because we need to start taking accountability in ourselves, why we are allowing ourselves to stay in these toxic relationships, why we're not addressing our own fight, flight, freeze, or fawn modes being in these toxic relationships. Why we're not when our feelings, opinions, thoughts, and boundaries are disrespected, while we're not being the strength in ourselves to stand up and not lose our shit over it, but rather collect ourselves with these narcissists, make our demands, walk away, and not get stuck in these relationships. I'm number one fault at this. This is why I'm so passionate about it, because I found myself in 2 marriages like this where I allowed it. And instead of taking accountability in myself for not having good enough fight modes, flight modes, freeze modes, or fawn modes, I kept blaming it on the other person and not holding the accountability in myself to get out of and repair the foundations I had learned as a child were incorrect. They were infused in my brain incorrectly as an adult. So it's really time to take accountability in your own self, why you're allowing it and why you're reacting to it the way you are, and how we're allowing society to go on this way as well would be the second thing I'd want to address in that aspect. And that's a whole nother show, I'm sure. Truly.
Absolutely.
How
I'll have a
people
word with one of my friends who recently spoke at the Acapulco. I hate saying that word, but it's this event that you would like to be speaking at. So, yeah, I'll try and pull some strings on my end as well, Jojo, because absolutely, the more people that hears this information, the better, in my opinion. So, yeah, fingers crossed that between all of us out there, we can make a push for you to be a speaker at that.
Thank you. Yeah, Anarchadelphia, Anarchapulco. It's about anarchy, about the true anarchy, that even anarchy as a construct has been diluted and so misrepresented. So it's just really time as humane humans that we look inside ourselves and cure the roots of both the trauma victim and the trauma abuser. It's time we look in ourselves to find those cures, and they can be found. Healing can be found. At least I know it can fully be found in the victimization. We can transform the trauma. The secondary issue would be to transform and heal the narcissist, to procure some kind of self-awakening in those types of individuals, self-awareness, and self-fire.
I find it's, in my personal experience, it's always easier for me anyway to identify the victim of a narcissist as opposed to the narcissist themselves. And what I mean is, I've known a couple of girls, that they've come out of really bad relationships, Jojo, and you think, oh, fair play to them, they've got out of that. And then before you know it, they're with somebody just equally, for lack of a better term, when you find out the truth, quite tyrannical. It's almost as if it's like a pattern of habit.
It is. And here's another really sick statistic.
And I just want to add, I'm not talking bad about any girl or woman who maybe can identify with that. It's just an observation, Jojo, obviously.
Well, when you don't heal the childhood trauma, and this is really predominant in men or women. So you see it a lot more in women because women will come forward a whole lot easier than a man who's been victimized in the narcissistic abuse relationship. And the survivorhood is called syndrome, narcissistic abuse syndrome. So I'm just, for the lack of better, going to use the female analogy. Females that do not heal their inner wounds on that childhood belief system tend to marry the narcissist in their family. Now, this insert male or female, okay? Women who get into relationships, now this is just statistics here, folks. The woman who doesn't do the inner healing, the more relationships she gets involved in intimately, the worse those relationships become. In fact, more women are murdered. If they don't do the healing, they will end up a statistic of either murdered or committing suicide, which really breaks my heart. I've been there. I've been there, folks. That if you don't heal the trauma, each time you're in a relationship, an intimate relationship, that next partner you're with will be more dangerous to you, will have more of an effect to psychologically manipulate you or kill you or cause you to try to commit suicide. So that should be frightening enough alone to say, wait a minute, I want to heal. I will take loneliness, the uncomfortability of being lonely, so painfully lonely, over being abused again, so I can heal myself, so this will never happen, so I can go on and have a happy, productive life with healthy, flourishing relationships. And not only the healthy, flourishing relationship happen, but then the careers explode, the soul's explosion happens, the destinies start to obtain. But here's the thing, Kev. Whether you're a man or a woman in a toxic relationship, why are you allowing it? A, is it the fear of being alone? And the majority will say yes. They'd rather be with someone abusive. Maybe it's wonderful in the beginning. They think that person's going to change. That person will show them part-time goodness. And then, you know, it's an exchange. It's a psychological exchange of negative and positive reinforcement that creates a Stockholm syndrome. But if you can get to qualified help to get into the stage of going no contact, I place a warning label to anyone leaving a toxic relationship with a narcissist because the first several months are so excruciating. They really require a warning label. If you think the abuse was bad, the detoxing off of a narcissistic abuse relationship in that syndrome is more pain than you will ever feel in your entire existence. More fear, more pain, more loneliness, and it'll almost feel worse than the abuse itself. And many men and women end up going back to an abuser or jump right back into another identical toxic relationship, but they are unaware that that next toxic relationship is even worse than the one they left. Now, I'm living proof of this, you know, the progression of my 3 relationships. The third one was, you know, terrifyingly debilitating. I survived 3 death experiences, folks. We do not want to do this anymore. And I don't even know where I was going with this. My apologies.
No, not at all. I mean, this is hard stuff, especially, you know, you've been there. But one thing I'd like to ask you is, you know, obviously this happens, both men and women are victims of this. But yeah, even nowadays, the year 2019, it's still really kind of out of the blue when you see one of these stories, you know, in the media where, you know, there's been a woman who's really been abusing the man. And you would think nowadays, especially with all the kind of, you know, equal rights and diversity and everything else, you would see more men coming forward. But it's still kind of almost, would you say, taboo for a guy, you know, to come forward and say that they've been a victim of this? Is it a mindset in men that make us maybe, you know, hold on to this more, stay silent, Jojo?
I think in the past, yes, I would have to say that. But in my current clientele, no, I'm working with equal amounts of men and women.
Well, that's good. That's good, you know, because, you know, just the other day, it was actually a story in the UK media about a guy who had been terribly abused by his female partner. And again, it got me thinking, you know, you still don't see very many of these stories making the press as opposed to the other way around. And that's why it's really good to hear you talking about the fact that, well, no, guys are now starting to come forward. So it's the media, again, they're cherry picking what stories they go with.
Yeah. And ultimately, what it comes down to is the male or female, whatever if you're the codependent. Also, please remember, folks, there's 2 sides to a coin, right? There's a heads and tails on a coin, but there's also the rim on the coin. So the codependent and the narcissist will share a lot of the same tendencies, will share a lot of the same wounds, but have different reactions. As I explained earlier, the codependent will want to problem solve where the narcissist will not. There's ugly behavior on both sides. I'm not going to lie. The codependent can be an ugly person just as much as the narcissist. So I'm not going to fantasize that codependency is just a one-way street where they're not doing any wrong. Both sides of the coin do each other wrong, but one is in a perpetual state of survival or defense, and the other is in a perpetual state of no self-awareness and blaming the other. So it's a psychological torture. What happens is something called a repetition compulsion. It's loving an individual that's abusive to you, who's not problem solving, who's not honoring your feelings, who's not honoring your opinions, who can't apologize. Repetition compulsion happens at a physiological level. It works with oxytocin the same way when two people are in love, share that love chemical. So the same chemical is working in this repetition compulsion and making the codependent stay with the narcissist and keep repeating these abusive cycles with one another. Many times the codependent will not have an ability to retain their patience. Many of us, I'm one of them, many of us have anger problems, and then we'll end up raging out. We end up raging out over the narcissist, and we get accused of being the abuser. We'll get so worn down that we'll say the most horrific things, and then we'll feel so shameful that we even became this monster of a person, because we're in this survival mode. And when you're trying to get someone to be self-aware, and you're years into a relationship, this is where we need to find the breakdown of why we can't pull ourselves out. What is that fear inside of leaving that situation? That's where we need to really break this paradox down almost, so this can start to be healed, at least start to be healed on the codependent level. We need better parents out there to begin with. The parents that have young children now under the age of 12, you need to be responsible for your children, to allow them to have their own thoughts, feelings, and boundaries, whether you agree with them or not. They need to express them to you. And as a parent, you need to sit and listen to them and not talk them out of what makes them feel safe. So we need to start with the parenting, so we can break these cycles of trauma bonding in unhealthy, toxic relationships. Kevin, I have to probably say right now, there's 80%, and this is an alarming statistic too. And all of my colleagues on YouTube who have these big recovery channels will talk about this. Oh, I just lost my train of thought again.
No, it's a statistic at 80%.
Oh my gosh, I've been working all day. Please forgive me, folks. I've been working with trauma victims all day.
That's
today.
okay. It'll come back to you. It'll come back to you randomly, probably during one of the next segments. That's what happens here. And, I've been noticing, aside from the fact you've been busy today, this ties in with what I was talking about with you last time and so many other people, this discombobulation that people are feeling right now, out of whack. Their equilibrium's off. They're having thoughts. They just disappear. It's all part of something that I'm noticing going on a wide scale, Jojo.
All right, 80% of all relationships, 80% of them have a narcissistic codependent dynamic. That's huge, folks. Huge.
That's over 3/4,
Yeah, that's over 3/4 of whether you're family, friends, or intimately involved are a narcissistic codependent dynamic.
Okay, well, we grew up in the pre-internet age, Jojo, right? And obviously this falls under the kind of category of parenting children nowadays as well. But probably asking you to speculate here, but what kind of effect do you think growing up in at the age of social media may have on younger adults just growing up just now, as opposed to when we were just growing up? Because I almost feel like, some of the material that they must be subjected to. We all see it online. Kids are no different. I wonder what effect that has on the younger minds, because it's almost as if, this world, it's trying to breed this narcissist-dependent relationship.
Very much so. I mean, we can go right into ELSA programming that we see with the young kids, toddlers, learned helplessness programs, and learned sociopathic behavior just on the television with cartoons and TV series and movies that, promote murder and vampirism and cannibalism and serial murderers as heroes and blood sacrifice as being cool, and so we're in a lot of danger, folks. We're in a lot of danger in this world, that if we do not start taking self accountability, we have more evil than good in this world. Mark Passio just did a live podcast over the weekend on what on earth is happening, that we have more evil in this world, in the people, than we do good. And that is because we are not being self accountable. We got to stop passing the blame. Every victim does it, including myself. We can blame the narcissist. We can blame our mothers, our fathers, our friends, our husbands, wives. And yes, it doesn't mean that they're not accountable for the hideous actions that they've done. But where do we stop blaming and start taking our own accountability and saying, you know what, no more. I'm going to face what's inside of myself. I'm going to face these fears. I'm going to change these childhood beliefs in my adult brain, and I'm going to be responsible now. And if you're a parent, again, are you a responsible parent? Are you sticking a cell phone in your kid's hand? Are you sticking them in front of a TV? Are you watching what they watch? Are you sitting with them? Are you dialoguing with them? Are you looking at them in their eyes? Are you listening to their pleas? Are you listening to their feelings? Do you even care about your own children's opinions? Where are you, parents? That's my answer here. I'm terrified for my own grandchildren.
No, absolutely. And,
not-
for anyone who's listened to this first hour of radio, let's go back to one of the main points that Jojo wanted to address tonight. And that was the fact that any criticism, or some of the criticism that does come on the shows we've done previously, is usually centered around the fact that Jojo is very new age, and I'm throwing up the air quotes there. But you go and listen to a true new age channel over on YouTube and compare that to what you're hearing tonight, because you're not hearing about everything's going to be okay, it's all love and light, the Palladians are on the way, the Light Force, or whatever else they call them. No, Jojo's been very, very honest. And some of it may even be hard for people to hear. Statistics like 80% of people, like we were talking about in the chat there while Jojo was talking, that is a huge number. But look around you. And like Mark Passio was saying about the world being more evil than good, that ties in with that 80% figure as well. And Jojo is absolutely on it. And again, I challenge any of her critics to call her new agey if they're to go and spend time listening to true new ageism, because this is absolutely so different.
I think where it comes down to the new age accusations is when I talk about energy alchemy, when I talk about using your your Folan and your Fohat, your Yoland and your Fohat forces inside of you, your ability to create using positive aspects of energy. That may sound very new age like, but I'm working with the laws of the universe. I'm teaching the laws, the 7 hermetic principles, they're known as, or the 7 universal laws, when I work with counseling and teaching someone how to not only get out of victimhood, not to get out of survivorship, but to go into thrivership. I even want to push them past thrivership. I just want to push them into a self-accountability mode, to really respect the universal laws, to work with the universal laws, to work with the manipulating energy. And perhaps that sounds new age. Energy is energy.
Energy is the only constant since the minute this universe, this multiverse was thought into existence. So you absolutely are working with the science of the universe. That's what I call frequency, vibration, energy. And again, you're not telling people everything's going to be all right, love and light. You're telling people you need to harness this. It's not something that's just going to happen, Jojo. There's work we need to put in.
It's a perseverance with an endurance. I mean, you really need endurance, and you need dedication to this every single day. And I promise you, every single day you will see some manifestation if you are seriously dedicated and have the endurance. And the moments that you don't have the endurance, you reach for help, or you go back to being dedicated again to pull that energy in a different direction, whether it's talking to a friend, or doing something with Mother Earth, or doing a ritual, or working with alchemy, the alchemy of energy, or the alchemy itself. ultimately the Hermetic laws, they're going to hit you in the face whether you believe in them or not, folks. Sorry. It's not New Age. It's fact. Laws are laws of the universe. Everything is mind. Everything is mentalism. What you think creates and destroys. Everything has a correspondence. Everything has vibration. Excuse me. Everything has polarity. Everything has rhythm. And we're talking, everything has cause and effect. Cause and effect is probably the most major law that you will get your ass kicked if you do not apply those principles to your living, to your self accountability. It's not fun. This is hard work, but the payoff is this feeling in you. It is unlike anything you've ever felt before, folks.
Jojo Seebacher is my very special guest right here on the Kev Baker Show today, and we're moving into hour number 2 right now. And of course, that's Chris and Cherie Geo singing us back in from the break there. And Jojo, I was saying to her about how we have Chris and Cherie. They kind of done a remake of the Jay-Z and Rihanna song, and Jojo wasn't aware that our very own Chris Geo, he really is so talented, and he's got lots of music over there on YouTube. Global Resistance, Chris Geo, if you want to check that out. You'll hear Cherie as well. Absolutely, I can't speak highly enough of Chris and Cherie, both for their music, which I knew a lot about their music. I'd heard their music, Jojo, before I'd ever spoke to them. And of course, for giving me the opportunity on this network. So never were there two nicer people out there. Absolutely.
True twin flame relationship, right? They
Absolutely. Yep.
Shit, and they're compatible with their talents and support of each other. And I have a theory about so many twin flames and true soulmates missing out on the glory of those relationships because of the narcissism that we live in. That true twins and true soulmates don't get to enjoy that compatibility because of the inability of this self-awareness problem, this narcissism that we live in. And there might be a lot that debate me on this, but I'm standing firm. I've stood firm on a lot of things that people have argued over and then years later end up agreeing. So I think there's many, many twin flames out there. If you're hearing somebody say, it's not a true twin flame, if somebody's abusive in the relationship or it's not a true soulmate, I have to differ, guys, just because we're living in a society that is so polluted with narcissists. So you're bound to be in a twin flame or a soulmate with a narcissist and a codependent, especially if 80% relationships are that dynamic.
Now, before we get right back into hour number 2, Jojo, I know that you would like to let people know, and I've seen people in the chat room asking where they can get in touch with you, but how do people go about getting in touch with you if they would like to, take part in one of these sessions that you offer?
Well, you want to contact me on Facebook, http://www.facebook.com/Jojo.Seebacher, Seebacher. You could go to my pro page, Solutions, SOUL, Solutions at Spiritual Life Journeys. You can message me there as well. Guys, my website's been down since 2008. It's been bought up by somebody. It's owned by somebody for the next 3 years. So I'm not working off of a website. I'm not working off of a huge YouTube channel. I'm word of mouth and through my shows and radio and YouTube. So that's how you contact me, through Facebook. If somebody wants to build me a website, they're welcome to. Right now, I don't have one, folks. Not since 2008.
And for as long as Jojo is willing, you can certainly catch her at least once a month on the Kev Baker Show for the near future and beyond, I hope, because I personally, and I know a lot of the audience, looking at the chat room and the messages I get, a lot of people enjoy listening to you talking about this stuff. And before the break, you mentioned these 7 laws. Now, I would love you to kind of go through these 7 laws, and at the same time, what I'm going to do for the audience out there is I'm going to open up the phone lines for anyone who would like to speak to Jojo about any of the topics that we've been covering tonight. And Jojo, I think this could be really good if we open up the phones. What do you really want people to be phoning in with for you?
Anything they want, whether it's trauma recovery, if it's any, whatever, anything. I'm open to any topic. As long as I'm, can answer it, I will. If I can't, I'll tell you I don't know. I wanted to mention, I'm going to give a shameless plug, folks. Anybody in the chat room, if you want a real 2-hour psychic soul reading to get my psychic abilities and my soul work with you, I'm offering 2 hours with a 9-square oracle pull. Anybody on chat tonight, if you message me and tell me you heard me through the chat room, I'll offer them at $65 instead of $111. But I am going to pick a winner for a mini reading, a free mini reading at the end of the show. So to let you know. And then I also have my other services, folks. I've got my assessment sessions, which are a 4 to 5 hour period. We spend together to develop to see if you've got any program or project, me labs, experiences, missing time, missing memory. We work on that type of level that I can give you an assessment on that. Those sessions offer an awake regression to the individual in a safe manner that's unlike hypnosis, which offers regression. We've got those. And I've also got teaching and counseling packages available as well. I've got consult sessions available. So, you can hit me up for any of those services aside from the psychic readings.
I would take you up on the regression kind of stuff to find out if I've got any kind of my labs or abductions. But, I like to have a laugh at the kind of blue chickens that you hear about nowadays over on YouTube and in secret space. And I'm a bit worried, maybe I've got a kind of a suppressed memory of some bad blue chicken done to me, and that's why I express it in humor now, Jojo.
I kind of, I stand by the blue avian race as being very much affiliate to the jinn, to the blue jinn. So I'll just leave it at that, folks. And most me lab survivors have a series of experiences with shadow people. If that helps anyone, that's probably 99% of any me labs I've spoken with has a experience with shadow people as a young child into adulthood.
Yeah, we talk about shadow people on the show here as well. Something that's very, very common.
Yeah, very much so. Quite a phenomenon with the shadow people, the watchers, whatever you want to call them. And they can also be traced back to the jinn as well.
So if anyone wants to phone in, if anyone does want to call in to speak to Jojo, all you got to do is if you're in the US, you dial area code, 213-233-3998. That's 213-233-3998. And if you're over here in the UK, it's 203-393-2871. And one last time, if you're in the UK, it's 0044-203-393-2871. So these 7 laws, Jojo, while we wait for the hotlines to ring off the board here, what do these 7 laws, what are they all about?
Okay. Well, we can take it back to the trauma recovery, whether you're a program survivor, a me labs, a victim of narcissistic abuse, an alien love bite survivor, targeted individual. This victimization, we've got to get out of this victim mode because these 7 laws prove that we don't have to remain victims. The first is all is mind. Everything is mental. The universe is mental. The universe has a mind. The universe created you. You have a mind. You can create with your mind. Your mind and what you create is all enveloped with the universal mind. That's kind of that in a nutshell. You have an idea that's created, you can bring it forth into reality. You can bring it forth into creation or destruction. The second is correspondence. And correspondence is as above, so below, as within, so without, as the soul, so the universe. And correspondence is kind of like taking what all is mind is about and adding feeling. It's kind of like the ingredient. Feeling would be the ingredient, the correspondence to thought, to create or destroy reality, your reality. The third is vibration. Nothing rests, guys. Everything has movement and vibration. You know, the skin on your hand is moving at such a fast pace. You think you're, you know, solid. You think the couch you're sitting on has movement. Nothing rests. Everything births and dies, day and night. The sun rising and setting. The vibration is when you unite the feeling with the thought. All right, it gives you the vibration. Excuse me. Then we have something called polarity, which is kind of speaks for itself. The poles, north and south pole, everything has a polarity, a pair of opposites, like and unlike. These polarities are the same, folks, only they're different degrees. So the north and south pole are both alike. They're both polarities. They're just at different degrees. Like and dislike are the same polarity, only at different degrees. Want and don't want are polarities. They're only at different degrees. They're paradoxes that can be rectified. So you can turn something of a like or something of a dislike into a like. How could I even explain that one? You can take a negative experience and make it a blessing. You know, maybe it was a negative thing to go through, but you got a soul expansion out of it, and you know, you met a whole bunch of beautiful people and your career took off. So that negative experience gave you the polarity of having a blessing. The fifth is rhythm. Everything has its rhythm, its rise and fall, its tides. It's like a pendulum. The pendulum swings and the tides go in and out. It's that equal motion. Everything has its tides and equality. The pendulum swings left, the same recompensates in the center neutral or fulcrum, and then swings right. So manifesting is measured in motion. It's where you put the focus on. You put it on the left, do you put it on the right, or do you put it on the center fulcrum, the neutrality? Each one of those areas of that rhythm, that rise and fall, has a consequence to it, or creation or destruction. And again, we can apply this all to healing and self-awareness, you know, self-growth. The sixth is called cause and effect. This is really important. It's probably one of the most important laws out there. Cause and effect is what you sow is what you reap. And a lot of victims don't want to hear this. You know, sexual abuse victims don't want to hear this. Targeted individuals don't want to hear this. It's hard to hear. I had a hard time hearing it as an abuse survivor, sexual abuse survivor. Even a TI, you know, I was fighting it. But the cause and effect is nothing escapes this law. You know, if you add too much salt to your soup, when you're cooking a soup, a vegetable soup, the cause of putting salt in is going to affect how that soup tastes. So if you put too much salt in it, you're going to ruin the soup. This is the biggest trap of victimhood, where you're not accepting accountability. Yes, you're being victimized. That person is doing wrong to you, but you're not taking the self-accountability that you need it to stop, or you're not leaving, or you're not standing up, or why you're in freeze mode, or why you're in defense mode. So our choices give us the experience to use a trial and error with this law. You can use trial and error with cause and effect, and grace can cover you. You know, we're humans, we screw up. It doesn't necessarily mean karma is going to come back and smack us on the ass. We can do things by grace to take the karma off of us. So it takes a lot more to really explain cause and effect, but I hope your audience can understand how that works. Our choices give us the experience. Through a trial and error, we can make this very mutable. We can make this a very changeable
Jojo,
cause and effect.
Can I just jump in? Because we've got a caller on the line, and I want to go to area code 423. And when we come back, we can pick it up on cause and effect because, yeah, we could probably spend a full show on cause and effect. But area code 423, welcome to the Kev Baker Show. Well, what's your name and what would you like to speak to Jojo about?
Hi, it's Valley. I'm one of your chat room frequenters.
Hey there, Valerie.
Hey, Valerie.
I've been a TI since 2011.
Wow.
Okay.
And
Wow. Tough.
they
Real hard.
followed me from coast to coast to coast. I've been followed for about 7,000 miles.
Right. Yeah, very,
And
very.
I did it. I've survived through the power of Jesus.
Did you have a question, Valerie?
I have no idea why I was targeted because I have psychic powers or something like that. Is that why they come after you?
You know, there's a number of reasons, Valerie. It's a really, really good question. An assessment session can help identify why you are a target, why you've become a target. It could be for various reasons. You may be a program survivor and not recall it if you've had any missing memory, missing years, missing time. It could be for your psychic abilities. Most targeted individuals I've ever worked with have supernatural abilities. They are targeted. Even program survivors, me labs, have these extraordinary abilities that they're targeted for. Let's face it, programming and military laboratory, that's all forms of targeting. Sexual abuse is targeting. TIs, the TI programs out there, neural remote monitoring, all targeting. It could be something you crossed someone. It could be someone in your family that you're associated with, that you're a target because you know them. It could be, did you speak out against authority? Did you make waves somewhere? I can't answer why it's happened to you specifically unless we sat down for a good
I've already asked all those questions to myself. I'm pretty sure there's details, but they're not specific assaults against me. It's just family.
Yeah, a lot of people who are TIs have an extensive military family background, science family background, history background, bloodline background. So I would actually recommend maybe you take 4 or 5 hours with me and do an assessment session, and I ask a series of 90 questions that puts you into an awake regression. And also, you're in full control of answering these questions. I look for patterns and years and numbers and experiences throughout your childhood, your family history. I ask all these questions, and then we determine if you might be a program survivor, if it's family related, if it's bloodline related, if it's supernatural ability related, if it's me lab related, if it's, even right down to a dark side of Cupid that Eve Lorgan talks about, if it's a designated relationship that has been patterned for you, that has been programmed for you to be part of, that you are the receiving end of being this targeted, horrible relationship. So that would be my answer. I can't give you a specific why for you unless you sat down and we.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah, that's one of the
Through the
things,
power of God, I've survived. I'm a survivor.
That's the main
I put
thing.
my little hands over my heart every day and say, thank you, Lord.
So happy.
We should all do the same.
No, absolutely, Valerie. Now, have you got anything else you'd like to ask Jojo before we jump back into this? And, I'm just glad to hear that you've survived this, because one of the things that's shocked me about targeted individuals over the time covering this is the extent that it goes to, the numbers involved. And like Jojo says, it's very hard to pinpoint why. And sometimes, when I look at victims of this, I even have to wonder if sometimes there's a random element to it, because you just can't pinpoint that one thing. There's no specific kind of thing that stands out.
I'm a Christian warrior. I'm not a victim, Kevin. I'm a Christian warrior. I'm here to fight for Jesus, all right? And we're not going to be victims anymore.
See,
we have to turn this around.
That is the attitude to have, Jojo, isn't it?
Excellent. I'm so proud. I'm so happy for you, proud of you. And, blessings to you. And may you be enveloped in beauty and positivity and gorgeousness and love.
And I thank God for every day He put me here in Tennessee, because I'm here now and I'm alive, and I will be alive. And I will call you, Jojo. Kevin will put your contact information in the chat room, right? Or in the description box.
Sure.
And I love you, Kevin. You've brought me so much peace. You're a sweetheart, Kev.
Well, I love you too, because, if it wasn't for people like you, I certainly wouldn't be taking time out to do these shows, Valerie. So it's a two-way street. I respect you as much as you respect me.
Yeah, Valerie, I give you so
You've
much
done a lot of
respect.
good, Kev. You have a big heart.
We'll try.
I will get in contact with you.
Well, the Facebook, I think Facebook, Jojo, right? And I'm going to drop a link in there in a second for your solutions
I don't
page.
do Facebook, honey.
Oh, no Facebook, Jojo. So what would you recommend, Jojo? No Facebook here.
Unfortunately, Valerie, if you have Instagram, you can contact me on there. I've got to get
I
somebody.
don't do any social media, honey. I don't do any of that.
Well, maybe, in the chat room, Jojo.
You can put an email or a YouTube or something like that up.
I don't, because I was doxxed a few years ago. I don't give any of that information out. So unfortunately, right now, the only contact is through Facebook or Instagram. Not until my website's released, and I just can't give any private information out. I was doxxed already.
Kev knows who I am. I'll give him my info and he can hook us up. Kev knows me.
Well, if you drop me an email, if you drop me an email, Valerie, at truetube1984@gmail.com, or if you get in contact with the network here, they'll certainly get your details to me or my details to you, and email me and I'll pass it straight to Jojo.
Terrific.
Okay. So
but I'm a survivor. They are not going to get me. I have the power of our Lord in my heart. They will not get me.
That's awesome. That's what I like to hear.
I want you all you TIs to know that. Put Jesus in your heart.
Thank you, Valerie. Thanks for calling in.
Brilliant. No, that's if you want to call in to the show, all you got to do to be like Valerie there is dial 213-233-3998. And if you're over here in the UK, that's 0044 203 393-2871. So one more time, if you're in the US, dial 213-233-3998. And in the UK, it's 0044 203 393-2871. So, no, that was great there having Valerie calling in. I always love to hear from the listeners, just, this targeted individual program, Jojo, and it's not confined to the US. You get them all around the world. This is something that not enough people really pay any attention to. And a lot of people, and I used to be in this, I hold my hands up, I used to look at targeted individual kind of information and think, oh, come on, this is just paranoia. What earthly reason could people have to be doing this? But then the more I looked into it, the more I spoke to people, I had to take a huge slice of humble pie because I couldn't have been more wrong. Now, that's not to say that everyone I've come across, I would say, is a targeted individual, but the numbers of people who are targeted out there, it's frightening.
It really is, Kev. And I have the utmost respect and probably the most compassion for what TIs, like hardcore TIs, go through. I lived as a targeted individual all of my life in this tag program, but my targeting got really, really bad on the level that most TIs do have and complain about. And I know in previous shows, TIs have gotten really pissed off at me because they're the ones I'm probably the hardest on, the TI community, because we have to stop making excuses. Yes, the targeting is horrible, guys. It's horrible. But I can tell you there are ways out. And this cause and effect law can really benefit you. You don't have to be the victim of it. And I know there's so many people that'll be the yes, but people. Yes, but I'm having this. Maybe you don't understand, Jojo, but I have this too, and I have that. I've been through it, guys. I've been through everything from pulse warfare to burns on my body, all, the programming, the suicide programming, you name it, rashes, everything, pitches in the ears. So cause and effect can really work really well for TIs, but it takes so much work. And by the time TIs get to me, they're so beaten down. They're so hopeless. They are so weak in their minds, weak in their bodies, weak in their hearts. They're isolated. They come to me so broken that it's really hard, the hardest group of people to help. And I feel for you. So I do want to clarify that I am hard on you guys for a reason, because there are ways out, and you just have to get so strong where you're so sick of it that all you care about is beating them. And that's the will. I need you to come to me so I can help you to get out of it, so I can help you to have it stop and learn how to work these laws with your counteracting the programming. It's a lot of work, though. It is a lot of work. So if you're coming in real tired and wrung down, you just have to be really prepared to work your ass off for it to stop, and it will stop. I may not stop completely, but
Join us after the break.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Welcome back to the final segment of today's Kev Baker Show with me, your host, Kev Baker. Obviously, I'm always here. Well, usually always here. One of me is always here. Maybe it's a clone. You don't know. And if you want to know more about that, go and listen to the last show we done here on the network. And of course, that little laugh you hear there is from our very special guest today, Jojo Seebacher. Now, before we go to the caller, we've got callers queuing up to speak to Jojo. Let me just quickly remind people, if you're in the UK, we're on at the earlier time of 9 p.m. this week because, yep, that time travel thing has happened where America put their clocks forward, and either they're wrong for doing it before us or we're wrong for not doing it at the same time as them. Who cares? We're an hour early for 1 week, so please bear that in mind. Jojo, the phones are going mad. Let's go to area code 772 and to a place I've actually been in America, Florida. So welcome to the show, and I think it's David. How you doing? And put your question to Jojo, David.
Hi, Kev. Yeah, it's David. I guess I just have a general question about the overall, between the 5G and the targeted individuals, and, are some of us more or less targeted? I've had some psychic events that have happened in my life, and I think a lot of the people out there have as well. So, it definitely seems to be more intense for some people than for others. But, I guess I don't know what my question is. I guess, I'm more of an overall trying to figure out this is a system of oppression, and it's getting us in multiple ways, technology-wise, and, as far as our souls go. I was just wondering if you could kind of speak to that a little bit.
No, absolutely. And Jojo, just listening to David there, I look at it this way. I see a lot of the targeting that's gone on in years gone by as possibly a beta test for something bigger to come in the future. And David mentioned 5G there. Now, it's my speculation, of course, but talk about the ultimate system of control when they roll this out to 7 billion of us and they can literally target us individually. But what would you say to the kind of 5G, the targeting side of things to David here?
Well, I think it is sort of like, we've got a little bit of back. Okay, testing. Hey, all right. So what I think it's all about, David, is the brain mapping of the human brain to beta, like Kev said, to beta test the program of the human brain so it could be put into the form of AI and psychotronics and things of that nature. And that's merely speculative. We can take mind control, way, way back to the 1800s. Sort of colleague of mine and documented it back to the 1800s. I believe it's been going on a whole lot longer with programming, but it's all, to me, what it's leading up to is this singularity, uploading all the consciousness into a singularity. And if anybody even watches TV, there's a show called Travelers on Netflix. They actually execute it very well.
My favorite
about
time travel
upload.
show. My favorite time travel show ever.
Very excellent show about the uploaded human consciousness, projected down into human bodies from the computer. I believe it was I'm covered in goosebumps. I have to go with that. I believe it's the beta program for the singularity. That's why TIs are really used with the mind manipulation, the neural remote monitoring, neural remote programming. And actually, neural linguistic programming has been one of the therapies for that, ironically.
You're just getting a bit of interference on the line there. David, are you still with us there?
Yeah. So what it sounds like you're saying is it's a science meets consciousness trying to program a consciousness into all of us at the same time. And we keep talking about the beta testing, and at some point the beta testing goes live. What are your thoughts on how soon we keep talking about beta testing and beta testing and beta testing, and
I would say, David,
we go back to the 60s.
If you look at the rollout of 5G right now and add to that the satellite component, and I'm usually Elon Musk's biggest champion, everyone knows that, but I have to criticize him when he's launching these 20,000 satellites to add to this kind of giving everyone the internet, because this full immersion that I used to talk about with Anthony Patch, this full immersion into 5G, I don't see what they need to build on top of that for it to go from a beta to a live test, because for me, that's got everything they need. And that's not to cause fear out there for you, David, or anyone else, but, this is just my speculation on the system that they're building, what we've looked at. So I think we're very close to that time would be my answer, David. But again, I'm just speculating as much as the next man.
I would also interject
Well,
that I've been through several beta testing programs of this singularity. I feel we've been through several of them, David. This isn't just one particular experiment. There's been multiple beta tests. We could follow TV programming, giving us the predictive programming of this program. Back in the 90s with the X-Files, it was either season 5 or 6, they did a show on the singularity and uploading of the human consciousness. I'm sure we can chase television programming with the predictive stuff before that. So I do believe we've been in a plethora of beta testing for the singularity program. We also have to realize, Kev, we do go beyond 5G. It's not talked about often. One of your listeners asked me to find an article that I had. I've been digging for this article. I've read up to 8G, which is 7 and 8G are interstellar.
Well, the frequencies certainly go up there, and the power ranges, right? So that's the big concern about the 5G stuff is, it's going to be, every couple hundred feet we're going to have these radios emanating frequencies at never seen before levels, and as well is that it's not just about internet, it's not just about hooking up a bunch of sensors, radios, and as far as cameras and listening to everybody, and these are working on similar frequencies to the body scanners at the airports. So I guess when they say full spectrum dominance, I guess they're not kidding. as far as what they're trying to go for.
Did we lose
And I guess
David?
it's a,
No, you're still there, David. You're
you
still
know,
there. Yeah.
oh, okay. Yeah, I guess. Excuse me. As far as these HEs, I mean, this 5G is, it's in our face and it's right now. Kev, you've got that going in Scotland right now, and it's.
You see
they're
that's
rolling it
why
out here, and
I mean, there's definitely a 6, 7, 8. Call it what you want out there. We know the military are years ahead of us. That's why when I look at 5G, for me it ticks a lot of the boxes that they need for the control, and you can overlay onto our reality with 5G. The augmented reality that we keep talking about, and then one step further to the virtual reality. And these synthetic robots that I keep talking about as well, Geordie Rose's things from Sanctuary, bear in mind that all they need to be operating out in this real world with the AI controlling them is that 5G as well. So obviously there's going to be more to come on top of 5G, if nothing else to make money. But for me, 5G probably ticks a lot of the boxes that they need right now. And that's probably why you hear a lot of people talking about it out there. It's probably one of the most talked about subjects in the alternative media, and rightly so. We're going to have to see how it plays out, because I'm not a fan of 5G, obviously, but living here so far in Glasgow, and like I've shown with stories before, I've been testing it as far back as November last year, and we're in a smart city here. And I've got a 5G router sitting about 5 feet from me. And most people are onto 5G routers now as well. So the good news is that I haven't noticed any additional kind of problems on my health or anything like that I didn't have before the tests. But that's not to say it's a good thing. Okay, I'm not saying I'm a proponent of it. I'm not going down the Trump road where I'm saying 5G, 6G, bring it all on. But so far, so good. There's been no...
Right, and the benefits of the technology are going to be astounding, and we don't necessarily need to be using these particular frequencies that are potentially harmful.
Exactly.
The throughput rates could be hit with other frequencies and not be as damaging. So we've got this idea that these guys are picking dangerous frequencies on purpose, and I've had a brother-in-law that. He was a mortgage broker, and he kept that cell phone close to his head way too much, and just happened to have a softball cancer tumor develop on that side of his head, and died of cancer. So, I think these frequencies are real things, and there's the good ones and there's the bad ones as far as the frequencies go. So,
right.
So I think so. Combined with the targeted individuals, why would this is definitely seems to be a demonic thing where we're being targeted. Our souls are being targeted, I guess, and that is a bad way of putting that in my.
This is where I think Kev was bringing up Geordie Rose, which is also part of this beta, one of these beta programs for these type of neural networks, for these these cyborg, these soulless humans with human consciousness.
Yeah, the synths, Jojo. That's what he calls them. He calls Vancouver the city of the synths, because he says that there's going to be millions of them living there very soon. That's going to be the pilot city. So it's the synths, Attack of the Synths.
Yeah, I believe they're already here. I mean, I truly do. I believe we've been dealing with synths for quite some time. So that would, again, be another beta testing program with this G technology. Let's face it, it started at 3G. These measured the same hertz frequencies of the human brain. So, and I'm so sorry about your brother, David, because honestly, it's done a lot of damage to the human brain, the blood-brain barrier. It's caused infertility issues, prostate problems with men, aging, Alzheimer's, just all insidious types of things. It's very satanic, very demonic. I think it's all demonic, and I think if we're not self-aware, we could even be playing into the demonic system ourselves and not even realizing it. I am very good at self-accountability.
Yeah, that's kind of a concern, I guess. With the with your psychic abilities, it gets to be a dangerous thing to figure out, who is tuned into. I'm a Christian, and I was certainly listening, and I'm still listening to Anthony Patch's show, with what's going on with
Same here,
CERN
dude.
and everything.
Same here. Same here. I'm back to listener mode as well, man. I can't get enough of that stuff. You know me. It gets to be an uncomfortable situation to where, okay, so how much do we trust as far as, this stuff is out there. The people are tapping into things at a subconscious level, or whether this relates to the atomic type realm that we get into when we talk about with Mr. Patch. But there's I guess. You see, if you can manipulate reality at the quantum level, you've pretty much rigged the game. And I think that's why,
So that's what they're trying to do is to do it technology wise, and it's not going to work. I mean, if they think they can master all this at an equation level, they're just going to blow everything up, is what I think. And I guess beta test. At what point do they? We're shutting. CERN is shut down for a couple of years now, and while they continue to upgrade, but while they, this definitely seems what they're trying to do is, they're going to, when they bring this thing back online, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't believe CERN is shut down at all. I believe that's what they're telling us. I don't believe it's
shut down. It doesn't matter if it's shut down or not. I mean, because when you look at the global particle accelerator picture, you've got Brookhaven not too far from New York. You've got multiple, into the hundreds of these particle colliders, some linear, some circular.
Something somewhere, right. So we're concentrated on CERN when they got these things all over the place.
That's why, myself and Anthony used to highlight, and Dave, I'm going to have to move on to the next caller as well, but I really thank you for calling in tonight. I'd love to keep you to the end of the show, but...
Absolutely. Yeah. I took a little longer than I wanted to. Hey, but, dude. Thanks for the opportunity.
Dave, anytime I open the phones up, you're more than welcome to call in, dude, because, I could definitely get into this kind of stuff probably all night with you, man. So thank you for calling in.
All right. Good night, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really I used to emphasize with Anthony Patch, Jojo, was, although we talk about CERN all the time and these crazy strangelets and things like that, it was Brookhaven Labs that were the first ones to get that 13 tera electron volts. So, I'm open to the fact that it could be definitely for cover, some extra experiments going on there. But I always try to make people aware as well. They could shut CERN down tomorrow, but nothing would change because there's that many other particle accelerators out there, and probably ones we don't even know about.
Without going into specifics of my history with programming in the military and government, on Montauk Plum Island at the Animal Disease Control Center with the pharmacy company that was using me, that went into Brookhaven, by the way, folks, became part of Brookhaven. There was a particle accelerator on that island and underground those buildings. So I've seen these machines, I don't know what to call them, this technology, when I was in sixth grade, going into sixth grade. I was just turning 10 or 11 at the time. I saw my first particle.
I want to back you up there, Jojo, because anecdotal evidence that I've received from people would agree with what you've just said there, that there is a particle accelerator in that location that is very, very relevant to what goes on.
used to draw pictures of it as a kid. Probably still have the composition notebooks with one of those photos in, suitcases of notebooks that I've kept throughout my writing years.
Yeah, folks, Stranger Things, it might be a really hit show on Netflix, but you get the real deal when you're talking to people like Jojo, because it's not the stuff of fiction. It truly isn't. Now, we're going to go to the next caller, Jojo. How does that sound? We are going
Terrific.
to area code 865. Welcome to the Kev Baker Show. What's your name?
Hi.
Hiya there. Sorry for keeping
Hey,
you
am I
wait.
on?
Yeah, sorry for keeping you waiting so long. But yeah, you're on the show now. So what's your name and what would you like to ask Jojo?
Okay, my name is Thelma, and I'm calling from Tennessee, and I wanted to ask about 5G also. I know that it causes damage, it destroys your sweat glands, and it is a military weapon. And I wanted to know, it's a millimeter wave, right? Or a microwave?
Millimeter wave, microwave, yeah, it's one and the same, yeah.
Okay. They don't go through certain materials such as metals, lead, when you get your x-rays. Lead protects you. I'm all about the protection, and I'm not going to have 5G around me, and I'm just wondering if I can stay out of it with the ways to protect myself from it, or I know something called a scalar wave goes through solids. So in my mind, if it's a millimeter microwave, there is protection with lead shielding, or I've also heard that if you throw, like if they're sending 500 and some hertz at you, if you throw the same frequency back, it acts as a mirror. It stops the frequency from coming in, that and lead, and there's a lot of stuff like that. What do you think about protections?
There's a new clothing range, Jojo, that I've seen, which has got interwoven like metal. It's like fabric, and it's almost like a Faraday cage kind of idea. And I think stuff like that, Jojo, is going to become a lot more popular because there's going to be a market for that. People are worried about the effects of this. So that's one thing I've heard of. But what would you say to that?
Okay, Thelma has brought up some really great points. The first is certain metals. Oh, let me plug in my phone. I'm about to lose power here.
Oh, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, I got to plug in before I lose you guys. Yes, so these waves, right, they're different types of wave technology, and they all do different things to the physiology of the body, the neurology of the body. And there's different measures to do, but all of them will equate to something on your skin. This technology is something that we have to be very proactive in eradicating on a consistent level. There is a gentleman, his name is Looking Out for F-A, Charlie. Looking Out for Charlie has a protocol to make your skin not be the battery for these wave technologies, these pulse technologies. There's internal stuff you can drink. It's very unpleasant to do. These baths you have to take, 3-4 times a year. Your skin peels. You've got to ingest stuff like boron. I mean, it's not fun to do these protocols, but if you want to eradicate it, it's going to be all around you, whether you get away from it or not. The technology is here. It's all over. There's hum towers every 20 miles, I think. If you look up the hum map of the world, you'll see a hum tower in every town across the world. So you can't get away from the technology. You have to really be proactive about taking your skin and not letting it be the battery anymore. This gentleman did a lot of investigative work, a lot of research into how it works through the skin and how these baths and internal protocols would work. as well as some of the metals that you can use. We have to use multiple things, Thelma. Shungite. We do certain types of clothing, these clothings with the metals in it, the compounded metals in it, Faraday cages, things like that. But you still will never be able to get away with it. They're spraying shit out of these planes. You're inhaling stuff to make you active again in getting connected to this technology. And I'm glad you also mentioned the frequencies, because there's a foundation I teach called Opposing Frequencies. A lot of it was based on a friend of mine, God rest his soul. He was murdered a couple of weeks after Max Spears was. He was an expert on using frequencies against these wave frequencies. His name was Zacchaeus.
Okay.
He's got some set lists up on YouTube that I give prescriptions for, but you got to put a warning label. You can't just go listen to them and expect things are going to get better. So it's all under, really getting guidance here of how to do these protocols, maintain the protocols throughout the year. It's not a once and done, okay, I'm never going to be affected by it again. It's very demanding.
What was the guy that does Opposing Frequencies?
His name is Dwayne Ewing, and he's got tones on YouTube. I would highly urge that if anyone is going to go listen to these tones, that you need to be aware. Do not drive listening to them. I will make a warning label that things will go bump in the night. They're very hard to listen to at first. They should be listened to on a prescription, like a daily thing, the same time every day for at least 7 days, and it requires you to unplug everything in your house first each week, or you do a reset like a computer boot. But while you're listening to these tones, you also have to add in other protocols to eradicate it out of your system. So you can't just do the tones without the baths or the detox of the metals. It's in conjunction with one another. If somebody listens to these tones, 1 or 2 days, they might get a pop in their ear and they have so much relief. And they're like, oh God, okay, I'm not getting those pitch tones anymore. I'm cured. And they don't continue the protocol. And that stuff will come back and hit you even harder. So, this is where
Sorry.
No, we're almost out of time anyway. Sorry, Thelma, but we're almost out of time here. And before we get cut off by the end, I want to thank you for calling in. And of course, Jojo will be back next month, and I think we'll probably open up the phones again. So yeah, sorry we had to cut you off kind of early there, Thelma. So I thank you dearly for calling in. Great question, great points. And Jojo, we're out of time already.
Thank you.
Wow. I'm just about to announce your winner of the mini reading in the chat room.
Oh, here we go, folks. Here we go.
I'm talking to Gemini. Gemini gets a free mini reading. Contact me Facebook, Messenger.
Gemini, you are the winner. Wherever you are, make it TFR.